Welcome to the Acquire's In the Boardroom interview. My name's Gavin Houchell, one of the founders of the Acquire Group. Today I'll be catching up with Rod Walker, a highly experienced executive, director and chairman. So welcome Rod, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Now Rod, perhaps you can explain how your early career set you up for moving into the boardroom.
Look, I think that whatever you do in life, you learn from it, and where you end up is accumulation of everything you've learned. So if I think back on, even before my career, I was captain of my football team, captain of my cricket team in school, and that taught me some early things about leadership, how to motivate, how to lead by example. I then went on, my first real job was selling encyclopedias door to door, and that I learned about how to sell, I learned about persistence. I then went on and ended up CEO of the Freedom Group. I learned about innovation. I learned more about how to lead and how to lead big organisations. And then right through to when I delisted the Freedom Group, and I learned about self-belief and tenacity, because it took about a year for that to happen. So I think I've learned different aspects of how to lead over many, many years, and the cumulative effect of that is being able to chair a company. And chairing a company is just a form of leadership.
That's good to hear. Now, noting obviously the board's role in terms of advising and helping set strategic decision making to the group, I guess I'm curious to see, in your experience you've had in boards, what's perhaps prevalent today that perhaps wasn't maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? Has there been many changes, do you feel?
Yeah, look, I think so. I mean, I'll state the obvious first, and that is that I think that business is tougher. Executives and boards seem to be working harder, longer, with tougher competition than they ever were. Now, I probably would have said that 5 or 6 years ago, but it's still the truth. It just seems to be tougher. If you force me to say what is really different between now and 5, 6, 10 years ago, I'd probably say that the increase in the internet and the use of the internet, and particularly social media, has had a significant effect on the way executives and boards think and operate. I mean, today a customer can be standing in line getting bad customer service and be sending out a blog while that's happening. And that can have a significant impact, negative impact on a business if you're not careful. Boards have to be so aware of what's going on social media than they ever were before. So that's a significant change in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I advise and sit down with a lot of divisional CFOs or GM finances that are aspiring to move into that perhaps group CFO role. As a company chairman, what do you look for when you're appointing a group CFO?
Well, there's probably a few things. I'll state the obvious first, and any CFO, particularly at group level, has to have an absolute clear understanding of the numbers. Not just look, I can go and get that for you. I can work that out. I'll come back to you on that. But they need to be able to react very, very quickly and understand the numbers. So not all CEOs have financial backgrounds. Some do, not all of them do. And most CEOs understand numbers, they can read a balance sheet, they understand cash flow. But they rely so heavily on their CFO to be able to very quickly tell them the detail of the numbers. So I think that's the first thing. I think I always look for a CFO who has had a track record of good communication with a board. Particularly in a public company, a CFO needs to have a dotted line relationship with the board, particularly the chair, and if they've got a track record of being able to do that with good, open, honest communication, that's something that's very important. And I think thirdly, and probably the most important of all, is that in a senior CFO role, I'm looking for people who are not afraid to challenge and not afraid to give the bad news. The CEO may think that he wants a puppet, but that's not what he needs.
That's not the right answer.
He needs someone who's going to challenge him. He needs someone who's going to give him the bad news when it's there, and the board needs to hear that as well. So they're probably three of the main things that I would look for.
Fantastic to hear. Now, a lot of people have a challenge in balancing time in the business or on the business. From an advisory or guidance perspective, how do you, from a boardroom perspective, help an executive get that balance right?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think that if a board is worth its salt, and particularly the chair, then it's not difficult to determine whether the CEO is spending too much time either in or on the business. Just by asking the right questions at board meetings, probing questions, by reading the board papers and understanding where the CEO's at, by determining how they're doing towards achieving milestones towards strategic objectives. If they're doing all those things well, then the balance isn't bad. But it's not difficult to determine, whether they're too much on or in. Having said that, I have a template which I have used, which is a very simple sort of timesheet, and I've had CEOs and senior executives fill that in on a 15-minute basis for 2 weeks. Fantastic. So I want to know what they're doing every 15 minutes for 2 weeks, at work, at home, on weekends, and then at the end of that time we sit down and analyse that and determine if, for example, they're spending too much time in operational issues, what I call job robbing, doing the jobs of the people under them, making decisions for them, and it's self-regulating. In other words, the CEO's got to fill it in himself. But if they're genuinely interested in improving the way they do things, and generally they fill it in appropriately. And it may seem a little junior, but it's a system that works and can help really understand where they're spending their time.
That's fascinating to hear. I'm sure there's probably been a few aha moments.
Yeah, there has indeed.
Self-reflection. So good. Rod, one final question, and I admit this is a bit of a hypothetical, but if you could invite 2 people into your next board meeting, and let's say they're dead or alive, who would they be, and why would you invite them in?
Yeah, interesting question. Probably the 2 people that I would invite, and I doubt whether they'd accept, mind you, but would probably be Jack Welch, one of the great CEOs of our century, arguably, Chairman GE for 20 years, drove that business to incredible profits records, a man of great vision, a great motivator and leader of people, very, very organised and structured, and yet sort of people's person. So I think he'd be fascinating. And the other one, may be obvious, but certainly I think he'd be great, would be Steve Jobs. So took Apple to one of the world's leading brands, a great innovator, a great thinker. A visionary and very passionate. Now I don't know if those 2 gentlemen could work together. Maybe they could. Maybe they couldn't. But I think they'd be two of the people that would be very high on my list to have sit in a board meeting.
Fantastic. Lovely to hear, Rod. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Take care.